Hey there, welcome to No Recipe Required. Hope you're doing well. I'm Dave. Today I'm excited because I'm going to show you one of my childhood favorites. It's a Greek dish called Pastitsio, and essentially you can think of it as like a Greek lasagna. It's definitely Greek in origin. It's got essentially it's like a casserole. It's got a layer of noodles, a layer of meat, and then a layer of bechamel sauce. It's really awesome. The primary flavors that are going on are the real key is a bit of nutmeg and cinnamon that's combined in with the meat. Absolutely delicious. Let's take a look. Okay, first thing we're going to do for our pastitsio is work on our meat layer. I've got a mixture of ground beef and ground lamb. This is the lamb. This is the beef. I'm using a pound and a half of beef and about half a pound, 3/4 of a pound of lamb, but frankly the ratios don't really matter. I think traditionally it's probably mostly lamb. My mom always made it with just beef. You can use, like I said, whichever ratio you want. The important thing now is just to get it ground off. I do like to add a little bit of salt right at the beginning, but then that's really it. Maybe a little pepper. Once we get this browned off and fully cooked through, we're going to remove it. We're going to add, we'll come back, we'll add some additional spices along with some onion, garlic, all that great and wonderful stuff. So I've got my meat basically fully brown. There's still a little bit of pink left in it, but that's totally fine. We're still going to cook this another little bit, both in the pan and then in the oven. Like I said, it's a casserole dish, so it's kind of bakes off like lasagna. I'm using a slotted spoon to just transfer that meat into a bowl that I'm going to hold it in. And this is all the fat and juice that came out. I don't really want that in my dish, so that's why I'm draining it off here. I'm going to go ahead, dump this. I'm going to leave just a couple tablespoons because we're going to saute some onions and garlic right in there. Let me do that. We'll come back. Okay, we've got our fat removed. I've still got little bits and pieces of meat in there, but it's just a couple, and frankly not a big deal. I've got a full onion that I just diced up. I'm going to add that right into that same pan, along with a couple cloves, 2 or 3 cloves of chopped garlic. And I'm just going to toss that, give that a good pinch of salt, like we do with all of our vegetables. And I'm going to let this onion and garlic just saute until they are translucent and nice and soft. Then we'll add back the meat, add in our spices, nutmeg, cinnamon, a couple other things, and then our meat layer will be almost done. My onions have sauteed down. They're nice and soft and translucent, along with that garlic that's in there. And then I'm going to add, call it 3.5 to 4 to 5 tablespoons of tomato paste. And I like to, you could add this anytime, but I like to add it now and stir it into the pan. Essentially, it's a dry pan. There's a little bit of oil in there, but no liquid. And let the tomato paste just cook off a little bit, and that gives it a bit of a deeper, darker flavor. You really just want it to, make contact with the pan. We're going to give this about 2 or 3 minutes. Then we'll come back, add the meat, finish the meat layer off. Okay, my tomato has cooked off a little bit, and I can see it's definitely browning on the bottom. Don't be afraid of it. It's okay. You can't let it go too long, but a little bit like that doesn't hurt anybody. I'm going to add my meat back into the dish and give it a stir to coat around, or to mix together that tomato and onion that's in there. And I'm also going to add a little bit of vermouth. Now, I'm using white wine vermouth because that is what my mom always used. I'm sure white wine's more traditional, but that sweet vermouth, it's a flavor I grew up with and what I like. You can certainly use anything you want. That's going to blend or evaporate away as it cooks down. We're also going to add some oregano, a good, half teaspoon in there. We're going to add a little bit of thyme, about the same amount, maybe a little bit less. If you have fresh, by all means. And then the two, certainly not secret ingredients, but the two ingredients that really kind of stand out in this dish are cinnamon. You know, I put in a couple dashes or a few dashes, and nutmeg. I've got I always use the whole cloves here, and I've got a grater. I'm going to grate maybe a quarter of a clove into the meat, and then we're just going to stir to combine. You can always add a little bit more. We'll taste this as we go. Oh, and I forgot, or almost forgot, to add in my salt, which we definitely need, and my pepper. So I'm going to stir this together, let it combine, turn the heat down, and just let it kind of stew together for probably 20 minutes or so, until all those flavors have a chance to just combine and meld together. We'll cover it while we're letting it stew like that. So while our meat is going and sauteing in the pot, I'm going to add, what have I got? 3/4 of a package, almost a whole package of linguine to a pot of boiling salted water. You know, we're going to cook this off just like we do any normal pasta. Now, the quantity, you know, the quantities for everything. Essentially, you're looking to fill a pan. I happen to be using, you know, one of these nice big Pyrex pans, and I'm looking for, you know, roughly even layers. So this we're going to go ahead, just cook off to a nice al dente, and then we're going to line the bottom layer of that pan with the noodles. That's going to be our first layer. Okay, so I've let my meat simmer off for 15-20 minutes. You want to give it a little taste after you uncover it. And this one, you know, I find tastes good. Definitely that cinnamon and nutmeg hit me, but could use a little bit more flavor. So I'm just going to hit it with a little bit more nutmeg, a little bit more of my cinnamon, certainly salt and pepper. That's the that's kind of the first thing you go to when you think it's not really popping for you. So let's get a little bit more salt and pepper in there. And then finally, I'm going to add just a touch more of the tomato paste. And the paste is going to kind of read, again, just give it a little bit more body and heft. I'm going to mix it in. I'm not even really going to let it saute anymore. We'll just get it mixed in over the next minute or two. Then I'm going to transfer this back to my aluminum bowl to let it cool down a little bit. Okay, so while my meat has been cooling off for about 20 minutes, I made a bechamel sauce off camera, but the recipe is on the site. You can find the bechamel. It's on the stove. It's just finishing off. What I'm going to do to the meat here is, it certainly doesn't have to be room temperature, but it should be fairly cool. I'm going to add in 2 eggs, and the reason why you want to make sure it's cool is if you add the eggs immediately, they're essentially going to scramble in the meat because of the heat from just coming off the stove. So you don't want that. You just want them kind of mixed in there. Get it thoroughly in, and those eggs are just going to help the layer of meat kind of stay together a little bit more in the casserole. Okay, as my daughter screams in the background, I am going to start laying pastitsio. I've got a nice Pyrex here. I'm using a square about 3 inches deep. If you want to use a round, go ahead, use the round. Doesn't really matter. I just put a little coating of olive oil on the sides and on the bottom to help things not stick. And we're going to start off laying our linguine down. You know, probably a 1/4 inch in terms of thickness. Looks like I cooked more linguine than I needed to, but no problem. We can just throw that right in the fridge. You want to make sure you don't have any holes in there, and it's nicely evenly coated, one layer, and then we're going to put in our meat layer. And easiest way to do that, I kind of like slop it on in 3 or 4 spots, and then come back around. Let's get that down. I like to put, the meat layer is the thickest layer in the pastitsio, probably a good 1/2 to 3/4 inch. More important than the overall thickness is getting it even. You don't want a little bit here and a big chunk in the center. You want it consistent so that one, it tastes the same all the way through, but then two, you want to make sure it cooks the same all the way through. Again, you want to make sure you don't have any holes. You smooth it out with the back of your spoon, fill out any gaps, and there we go. And you notice we are, you know, almost to the top. We've got probably 3/4 of an inch left, and that space gets filled with our bechamel sauce. And here I just go, you know, kind of right down the middle, and it'll spread out pretty easily. I like to get a good, you know, 1/2 inch layer of bechamel on there. Use the same technique to spread it out. And it's a little soupy now, but that's, you know, that's perfectly fine. It's gonna firm up in the oven. Once we get that on there, give it a little shake just to spread it around. Again, make sure you don't have any holes. And then the final little touch is I sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan cheese right on top. It's not a whole lot, and I do it as much for the kind of the color and a little bit of crispness that the cheese will give the topping, as much for the you know, for the actual flavor. So there we go. We've got our pasticcio made. Nice thing about this, you know, you can do it a day ahead of time, right? As far ahead as you want. We're going to pop this into a 375-degree oven or so for about 45 minutes. Everything is obviously cooked, so you're not looking to cook it through. You just want it, you know, nicely golden brown on top. Let those ingredients and layers kind of come together. Okay, so I just pulled the pasticcio out of the oven. It took about 45 minutes to an hour or so. But more important than the time, you're looking for that nice golden brown crust, a little bubbly around the edges. Now, I think it's important, just like lasagna, to let this sit for a good 20 minutes or so. And then once it does sit, you can go ahead and cut, you know, nice little squares out of it, serve them up, maybe with a little crusty bread, and it's absolutely delicious. I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required.